Well, actually, the first thing I did was turn them down. Actually, when they offered me, when Adam Ellick, who I made Operation Infection with, approached me, he told me all about the story, and I just felt I felt completely intimidated. I was like, this is big. Yeah, like I say, this is the big boys, right? This is high stakes. If half of what he says is true, it's just epic, and I've got no. I don't really have any experience in making something as big as this. And so I basically got scared off, and I just finished making the sci-fi series and seeing lots of people kind of not like it. So I was also feeling quite, I'd lost my confidence as well, I think, at that point. So I actually turned him down, and he came back still a couple of months later and said, I still haven't found the right person. I still think you're the right person. It's the only way I can convince you to do it. I think, again, it was my partner who said, what are you doing, you idiot? It's the New York Times. Just say yes, and so I did. I signed on with them, and the way it worked was, so Adam Ellick, he's a veteran reporter and video journalist at the New York Times. He's worked in Afghanistan and all over South America. He discovered Malala. I think, he's a very kind of experienced journalist, and he was obsessed with this issue, and he did all the reporting. So he'd actually spent already about a good 6 months or so on the phone, talking to experts in disinformation and talking to people from the CIA and reading books and digging up all of these old KGB documents. He had a huge kind of portfolio already by the time we started speaking. And I was in the UK. I had gone over to New York to meet him before, but we decided to make it remotely, working on different continents. And so it started with I think it was 3 days where we did a Zoom call like this, basically, and he would just brain dump everything at me for about 4 or 5 hours. And then we did that for 3 days. And he was like, here's everything I know. And he showed me all the films he'd found, and we watched them together, and he showed me all the documents, and he told me, here's the bits that you need to look out for in the documents. He had this kind of 80-page memo he'd written with all of this stuff, and he sort of took me through it page by page. Like, I just kind of absorbed like waves of information. And the best way I could think of to describe it was like, do you remember the old 1960s Mission Impossible that would start with, here's your mission, Jim Phelps, if you choose to accept it. And then the episode would always start, he'd hear the message and the tape would destruct, and he'd go into a house that they'd rented, and he'd get some yellow legal paper and a pencil, and you just see him start scribbling and thinking about it. And then the next scene, he assembles his team. And it was kind of like that, in the sense of, like, I absorbed all this information, and I basically went away for a couple of weeks and kind of let it percolate, and I had to then turn all of that information into a film. And he was like, that's everything. I have no ideas, no preconception about what this should be. Is it an hour long? Is it 15 minutes long? Are there interviews? Are there not interviews? What do we do? So I had a completely blank slate and just all of this stuff. And I think what was the bit where it kind of clicked for me? I think one of the earliest ideas was, conceptually, was I loved reading about how the KGB had sort of planned this operation to dupe people, and they executed it perfectly and with great sophistication. And it reminded me of one of my favorite genres of films, which is the heist movie. I love a good heist movie. And so I was like, what? That's what we'll do. We'll do this as a heist movie. So I kind of, figured out what the beats of that genre are, and sort of tried to find ways to kind of fold them in. And stylistically, it kind of influenced, like I say with the AIDS story, it kind of influenced the style there and the music. It kind of read a little bit like George Clooney trying to tell people, all right, here guys, here's the down low guys. And then also just knowing some of the archive material, the kind of creepy Russian guy in the glasses sort of saying how disinformation and how active measures works was so compelling. I was like, that's a key asset that's going to, you know, I want it to build up to this. So that was it. It was sort of him almost handing over a huge amount of information and then me trying to sculpt it into a film.
That would therefore mean, you filmed remotely as well, therefore. So you were directing someone remotely. Was that the case?
No, actually, with this one, for the interviews, I flew out and we did a week of shooting interviews. These are all people that Adam Ellick had found through his reporting and had good relationships with. He'd spoken to, you know, the elderly, the former KGB agent, Bittman, many times on the phone. They were, you know, almost like friends by the time we went over there. We had a week on the road driving from DC to Boston to New York and filming interviews. We filmed, you know, things like the dark room scene that I'd come up with, and I came up with a bunch of these kind of visual devices to try and illustrate some of these concepts. So with that one, I was over there, although during the pandemic, I direct a lot of stuff remotely now.